Ahoy, mates! Let's kick off a new week, a new month from Lord Jupiter, the Astrovan, from a remote beach location. We have a lot going on this week to talk about, including a full moon on Thursday, a moon wobble peaking on Friday, and all of that creating some energy for our Roll the Dice Lucky Stars. Hi, Kristin.
Hello, Thomas and Fun Astrology Podcast. Happy December 1st. This week begins more cautionary, but we move into challenging energy for the full moon on Thursday. This weekend looks better with the grand trine between Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn. To find out more Lucky Stars days for December, join the Lucky Stars Club. Thomas and I can't wait to see you there. I hope you all have a great week.
And you too, Kristin. I hope you guys can find your driveway up there today, maybe get dug out from all that snow. Well, Kristin obviously nailed what we're dealing with this week. I'm going to say that the general vibe as we're starting this week, and by the way, Lucky Stars is out. I hope you heard that announcement last week. We ran it for several days, letting you know. But the general vibe this week, I'm going to say is wonky, at least as she said, the beginning of the week. So the moon is good overall. We have a long void, of course, today from 1:14, let's call it 1:15 Eastern, all the way to 10:12 p.m. tonight, if you're counting. That's a long void, of course. So no support from the moon for a good chunk of today. And the last aspect before it goes void, of course, is a square. So the moon just isn't helping us today at all. But the Taurus moon today, it moves into Taurus at 10:12 this evening. That's good. Moves into Gemini on Wednesday for the full moon Thursday. We'll talk more about that here in a bit. And it goes into Cancer, moves home on Friday for the weekend. So after we get past today, the moon is not in bad shape. Why then the tension this week? Why wonky, Thomas? Well, we have those two big back-to-back events in the sky, the full moon Thursday and the moon wobble ending on Friday. We have to take these moon wobbles super seriously. Obviously, this one has caused a number of different things, including that tragedy in Washington, D.C. last week. Then throw any typical full moon on top of that, you can see why I'm saying, not only wonky, but guard up, caution. It does get better at the later part of the week, and we're working our way there. There's one other influence I want to mention, and that is Neptune, the watery planet of the Lord of the Sea, turns direct next Tuesday. So it's strong all this week. And then when it turns direct next week, it joins Saturn in their foot race to February 20th when they conjoin. So you have Mercury strong coming off of its station, Saturn strong, Neptune strong, Venus is strong. It still is across from Uranus. When you pile on all of the components of what can throw this chart wobbly, they are there, but also some very positive characteristics. They are there. Now, as Saturn and Neptune turn direct, and we'll talk more about this next week, but as Neptune turns direct and they start to move out of Pisces here between now and the end of December, that is going to be closing out, at least as far as the outer planets are concerned, the sign of Pisces for a long time. In fact, it will be Jupiter not until the mid-2030s. So we've had this spiritual renaissance of the heart, at least for the high timeline side of things, and that now is going to be turning into spiritual aggression, if you will, spiritual battles, and new spiritual paradigms coming from the creative side of Aries. There is one other factor I'd like to throw in here, not astrological, but there are two big, massive sunspots that are going to be rotating back from the east limb of the sun that are going to be facing Earth again. And these are the big boys that threw off those massive, big sun flares, solar flares. 2 weeks ago, was it, that we had the auroras? Well, they're back. And boy, while they were on the dark side, the backside of the sun, they were throwing off more big stuff. So they have not slowed down, but look for more solar activity this week and next. Here are some aspects to put on your radar if you're interested in the technicals. Tomorrow, Venus, now in Sagittarius as of yesterday, sextiles Pluto in Aquarius tomorrow. In fact, I was looking at a chart over the weekend, and there is some interesting stuff around money, and we could take it a number of different directions. But since Venus rules money, and it is in a favorable aspect to Pluto, it would be a good time, and especially with the energy that we're going to talk about next related to the full moon this week, of releasing any money fears or paradigms that don't serve you. That is a very good spotlight. Then we have, of course, the full moon, and then the sun squares the nodes of the moon on Friday. That's the peak of the moon wobble. And on the weekend, that's where the positive stuff starts, and Mercury trines Jupiter and Saturn over the coming weekend. So let's put this otherwise caution warning flag flying, but let's put it onto a high timeline path. So the first thing that I would say is that releasing should be our focus through Friday. Not the best first part of the week for starting things, more for completing or releasing or purging or resetting things. In fact, you could start the typical end of the year stuff early this week. If you have some extra time on your hands, do some of the things you would do toward the end of the year. The energy is very much with you the first part of the week. And then I'm going to suggest, and we mentioned this earlier, that you come to Thursday's full moon with two plans. It's a dual sign Gemini, a dual sign Sagittarius across from it. The moon will be in Gemini, the sun will be in Sagittarius. So see what you can release from two parts of your life. First of all, let's take the Sagittarius part, the releasing from your heart, from your soul. You could analyze beliefs or dogmas, Sagittarius and Jupiter, but just being willing to see things differently. Where could you shed a light on a situation that it might appear differently if you looked at it differently? That would be one. And then obviously, Mercury rules Gemini where the moon will be, so we can also release from our thoughts, from our head. If you remember Zig Ziglar, any of you back in the day from the 90s, this goes back a ways, but get rid of that stinking thinking, he would say. That is a really good full moon plan for this week, and you can start getting ready for it now. And as soon as that full moon clears on Thursday, then you start moving into those positive aspects that we talked about. The creative energy is back. The moon starts to grow into that first crescent. It starts to appear in the sky again, and that's where you should be germinating new things, new ideas, and new plans that you want to implement. I would kick it off right after that full moon. So I hope that sets you up well. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you have a wonderful week. I'll be back with Kristin on Wednesday, and she'll be here with you tomorrow.